I hope you can take your family on a big long trip across the country, or at least down I-95 to Disney World. It's so much fun to see things that you only read about in World Book Encyclopedia. That is a thrilling experience. And I don't think it would have been any less thrilling for people who were seeing it for the very, very, very first time, even though there was no World Book Encyclopedia to tell them what they were about to experience. Could you imagine being with the Lewis and Clark expedition and heading to the very furthest coast of the Great American West? Or better yet, Johnny Appleseed, who struck out with nothing but a pot on his head and a sack full of apple seeds. There was this feller named Johnny. He lay down one night and he had a dream that he's going to do something great for our country. He didn't know what that was all about. The dream wasn't real clear, but he was motivated. And he jumped up the next morning and he put a cooking pot on his head. That'd be a hat, but it would also serve as a soup pot when he cooked over a campfire at night. He took a big sack of apple seeds and flung them over his shoulder, and he got himself a stick and he started off down the road. He didn't even stop to put shoes on. He was so excited to see what great things he was going to find. Off he went. Well, as he walked down the road, he met folks all along the way in the Great American Frontier. After a long ways, he came up to this place called Kaintuck. When he got to Kaintuck, he met this fella that was wearing buckskin fringed jacket and breeches, had a coonskin cap with a tail hanging down the back. At first, he thought it was Fess Parker, and then he realized it was Daniel Boone. And he looked at Daniel Boone and he said, "Daniel Boone, what you gonna do great for this country?" He said, "I tell you what," he said, "I'm building a wilderness road. I'm taking the pioneers right through the Cumberland Gap and we're headed out to the west. Why don't you get in my wagon and come with us?" Johnny, they called him Johnny Appleseed on account of them apple seeds he carried everywhere. He said, "Oh no, friend, I think it best if you let me be. I sleep out under the stars. They're my canopy. I listen to them. They sing to me. Tell me what a great country this is going to be. But I wish you well with your wagon load as you cut this trail called Wilderness Road." And then he jammed some holes with that stick and throwed some apple seeds in there and kicked some dirt over them. He didn't even stay to watch the seeds sprout. He traveled on. Traveled this place called Illinois. When he got to Illinois, he saw this big, long, lanky young feller standing next to a fence rail. He had an axe chopped up in a stump. He said, "What's your name, friend?" He said, "I'm Abraham Lincoln." He said, "Well, nice to meet you, Mr. Lincoln. What you going to do great for our new country?" He said, "I am studying the law. I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I want to do for our country." He said, "Well, if you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to have to learn how to speechify. Why don't you climb up on that stump and let me hear you talk?" Well, Abe Lincoln jumped on that stump and he speechified Johnny Appleseed up one side and down the other. It was a marvelous talk. And then when he got done, he said, "It's getting late. Why don't you come in my log cabin and have supper?" He said, "Oh, no, friend. I think it best if you let me be. I sleep out under the stars. They're my canopy. I listen to them. They sing to me. Tell me what a great country this is going to be. But you keep studying the law if that's your bent. Why, one day you might even make president." And he planted some apple seeds there in Illinois, walked out to the Mississippi River. Sitting there on the levee was this feller in a white suit, had a string tie and big old bushy white hair. He said, "What's your name, friend?" He said, "I chose the name Mark Twain as my pen name. Others know me as Samuel Clemens." "What you going to do great for this country?" He said, "I'm writing the great American novel." He said, "Oh, what's it about?" He said, "Well, it's about these friends, a fellow named Jim and a fellow named Huckleberry, and they're going to get on a raft and do all kinds of adventures on the Mississippi River." He told him all about it, and then they heard a steamboat blow its whistle, and he said, "Come on the boat with me, and I'll tell you more about it." He said, "Oh, no, friend. I think it best if you let me be. I sleep out under the stars. They're my canopy. I listen to them. They sing to me. Tell me what a great country this is going to be. But work that story over again and again. I think you got something there in that Huckleberry Finn." He walked out to Texas. Things were real quiet in Texas. There's this feller wearing homespun, sitting out in front of this old church. He's greasing and cleaning this big long gun. He said, "You look serious, friend. What's wrong?" He said, "My name's Davy Crockett. We got a feller down there in Mexico that's headed this way named Santa Anna. We're going to have to teach him not to mess with Texas." He said, "You better come inside this mission for safekeeping." He said, "Oh, no, friend. I think it best if you let me be. I sleep out under the stars. They're my canopy. I listen to them. They sing to me. Tell me what a great country this is going to be. But I wish you well as you give that tyrant blow for blow when you defend this mission called Alamo." And he planted some seeds there in Texas, walked on up to the Dakota Territory, met Chief Setting Bull. And then he walked way out to Yukon Territory. And some folks say they even saw Johnny Appleseed talking to King Kamehameha in Hawaii. Now, how he walked across the Pacific Ocean, nobody seems to know. Of course, he was barefoot, and that might have had something to do with it. That was a long time ago. I guess Johnny Appleseed has gone to glory. And you might think, well, his dream never come true. He never did anything great for this country except poke holes in the ground and plant apple seeds. That's where you'd be wrong. Because if you was to go on a great trip across the country, there's apple trees that bloom and bear fruit all over this great land. And if you was to pick an apple from one of them trees and take your pocket knife and slice that apple open sideways, on the inside you'd see a star, and it'd sing to thee and tell you of a great country built by men for you and me. That's how you know it's a Johnny Appleseed certified apple, if it's got that star right there in the middle of it. Yeah. Now, I told that story one day, and a friend of mine, she said, I don't like that story. I said, well, it's Johnny Appleseed. Everybody likes Johnny Appleseed. She said, yeah, but the way you tell it, you talk about all what the men did for our country, and you don't say anything about the women. There were plenty of strong, capable women who helped build this country. I said, I know, but when I wrote the story, Condoleezza Rice had not been admitted to the Augusta National, so I can't help it. I can tell y'all voted for Ron Paul. Now, I do meet plenty of capable women across this great land of ours. Strong women, women of substance, mostly at Waffle House. Whenever I travel, I like to eat at Waffle House because that is where you can feel the pulse of the political action in this country. If you want to know what people think on any social issue, eat at Waffle House. I got to where I kept a Waffle House journal. And when I'm traveling, particularly when I'm alone, I go into Waffle House and I sit near the cash register at the high counter because then half the restaurant is on your right and half the restaurant is on your left. And if you pay attention, you can just hear all kinds of conversations swirling around. And I write it in my Waffle House journal. I don't edit it. I don't change it. I just write down what I hear people saying. And then I report it to citizens like you. I was in a Waffle House in South Georgia, and it was early in the morning, and it was not real busy yet, and a gray-headed couple came in, and they sat down at the booth, and the waitress came over, and she slapped down the napkins and the silverware, and she looked at the older lady, and she said, oh, you coming in with him now, honey? Oh, goodness, I can't flirt with your man anymore if you come in for breakfast with him. And she said, oh, yeah, I know you're just joking around, but I retired from my job, so now I can come with my husband, who retired before me, and we're going to have breakfast several mornings a week right here at Waffle House because I'm retired and I don't want to cook so much anymore. Oh, really? You're retired? Well, congratulations. And where did you work, honey? She said, I was a fashion buyer for Belk's department store. You were? You bought clothes for Belk's? Yes, I did for 37 years. Oh, maybe you could help me get some fashions. I tried to go to the store the other day and get something to wear. And well, the first thing, you have to be about that big around before there's anything that'll fit you these days. And I finally did find something that I kind of liked. But when I picked that blouse up, you could see slapped through it. And I took it to the checkout girl and I said, what is this? She said, oh, it's see-through, but we have these bras to match. I said, bras? I work at the Waffle House, not the Silver Slipper. I went into a Waffle House in North Carolina. I am not lying to you. The man at the counter sitting next to me had 2 packs of cigarettes, and he literally lit one off the other and drew in and looked at me and said, you think they'll ever find out what causes cancer? I went in a Waffle House in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. It was busy lunchtime. I sat down on the stool and a girl jumped to the counter and she said, what you gonna have? I said, I don't know yet. How about you get me a cup of coffee and I'll make up my mind? She said, hurry up, I don't have all day. And then she spun around, and when she spun around, there was another waitress that just met her nose to nose, and the second waitress said, that was mine. She said, what are you talking about? She said, that customer was mine. She said, don't say that. He's not a machine. He's a man. You should say he was mine. And you weren't fast enough, so I took him, and I'm not sharing the tip either. Besides, he's not your type. And then she said, well, he ain't your type neither. And they both threw their head over their shoulder and gave me a second look and said, nope, he ain't neither of our types. And then they said, no offense. And I thought about it a minute and I said, none taken. I had a gig that went kind of late in Asheville, North Carolina. So it was about 11:30 at night. I went in a Waffle House to get some late night supper. That's when you really meet the cross section of America if you go in just before midnight, because there ain't no place else open. And so everybody goes to Waffle House. The place was packed. The guy who was keeping everything together was named Joe, and he had a little trainee with him, a new waitress who was learning the ropes of Waffle House. And so she was following him around like his shadow, and he was showing her everything to do. I sat down near the register in my custom seat, and off to my left, there were 4 workmen. I suppose they worked second shift, and they had just gotten off work, and they had come to Waffle House for supper. You could tell they were all raised with many brothers, because they sat with a plate in front of them, and their left arm hooked around the top of their plate and held their fork like, if you touch my food, I'm going to stab you. And they were just shoveling it in. And somehow Joe could work in between all of those arms and forks flying and refill coffee without making them miss one little bite of their food. On the other side of me, there were 2 ladies in fur coats and had bright painted fingernails and flashy jewelry. I think they had been to a ballet or something. They were discussing the performance and their hands were flying and they were all excited. Joe would slip in and give them extra napkins and things without disturbing their conversation. His little shadow was watching everything. And then there were these girls sitting way down in the very last booth, and one girl had mascara just streaming down her face. She just looked awful, and she was sitting there going, and the other girl kept saying, "Do you love him? That is the question before you, because he ain't never going to change. Do you love him?" And she'd start, and Joe would slip in, dab her eyes with a napkin, refill her coffee, pat her on the back. And then this man walks in, and he's wearing cowboy boots that were supposed to be leather. They're like high-quality plastic. And he's wearing a beautifully pressed pair of polyester jeans and a purple Western-style shirt that offset his gray hair very nicely. He walked in, and Joe looked up from the grill, and he said, "You go tonight?" And that man said, "Yep." "You gonna go tomorrow night?" "Probably will." "That's good. What you want to eat?" "What you got under that plate over there?" "Chocolate pie." "I want a piece of chocolate pie." "Now you know you're a diabetic. You can't have chocolate pie. You're gonna have to pick out something else." "What's she cutting up?" "Tomatoes. She's making a salad." "Can a diabetic have a salad?" "You can have a salad." "I want a half salad." "You can have a whole salad." "No, I ain't that hungry. I just want a half salad, and I want ranch dressing." "You got ranch dressing?" "Yeah, we got ranch." "Good, because I don't like that $1,000 dressing. I want ranch dressing on a half salad and a cup of coffee." "You ain't going to put sugar in that coffee?" "No, I'll put pink stuff in the coffee." So Joe and his trainee got this fella all set up. He said, "So you went tonight?" "Yep." "Did you have a good time?" "Yep." He was dressed in his square dancing outfit. "Did you dance with a pretty girl?" "I danced with a blonde. She was an old blonde, but she was a blonde." You could tell that this man suffered some from depression, and so Joe's trainee was trying to talk him up, chat him up, and cheer him a little bit. And she said, "Oh, I like your outfit, and I bet you're a good dancer. I bet you could dance circles around most of them people on that Dancing with the Stars." He said, "No, we dance in a square. That's why we call it a square dance." He finished up his food, and he started out, and Joe said, "You are going to go tomorrow night, right? I'll see you again after the dance." He said, "I probably will go." And he left. And then I saw Joe take the trainee and pull her way down the other end of the counter so that if Joe's friend was still standing in the door, he wouldn't hear. And he said, "His wife died about 6 months ago. And we were afraid we were going to lose him too. He was so horribly depressed. But he's just started to go back to the square dances without her. And we're encouraging him as best we can. But ever since his wife died, there ain't nobody to check his sugar, and he won't behave himself. So when he comes in here, do not let him have chocolate pie." I got up to pay my bill, and laying there on the counter was a copy of the Asheville Times. And it said, "Congress passes new health care." And I thought, they obviously didn't come to Waffle House. We don't need new health care legislation. We got Joe who'll check your sugar for you. And that was the end of that.